Amy nodded. That's exactly what we hoped you would say. The mining station disaster became a turning point for galactic medicine. News of the human medical team's success spread throughout the galaxy, and requests for human medical personnel began pouring in from hospitals and medical facilities everywhere. Within a year, the Human Medical Integration Program had expanded to over 100 facilities across 12 star systems. Every major hospital now kept at least one human medical practitioner on staff for cases that went beyond standard protocols. Amy continued to lead the program, but she also returned to direct patient care. She had learned that her greatest satisfaction came not from training others or managing programs, but from sitting beside confused and frightened patients and helping them find their way back to health. In her final report to Administrator Velthar, Amy wrote, "We have not revolutionized galactic medicine by replacing alien knowledge with human knowledge. We have made it better by adding human understanding to alien expertise. The combination of advanced technology with intuitive care creates possibilities that neither approach could achieve alone." Velthar, reading the report in his office, had to agree. The galaxy was a healthier place because humans had learned to see healing as something that happened not just to bodies, but to whole beings with minds, emotions, and spirits that all needed care. The emergency call came in at Oro 300 Galactic Standard Time. A massive mining station in the Outer Rim had suffered a catastrophic explosion during a routine crystal extraction operation. The blast had damaged the station's life support systems and injured hundreds of workers from a dozen different species. Amy was sleeping in her quarters at the medical training facility when her communicator started flashing with urgent messages. She was out of bed and reaching for her emergency kit before she was fully awake. Years of training had taught her that when disasters struck, every minute counted. The message from the mining station was brief but alarming. The station's automated. Medical systems had been damaged in the explosion. The few medical personnel on site were overwhelmed by the number and variety of injuries. Many of the workers were suffering from conditions that did not match any standard treatment protocols. "We need all available human medical personnel immediately," the message said. "The situation is beyond our capabilities." Amy contacted Jake, Martinez, and Lisa Thompson, along with 6 other human nurses who had completed the new training program. Within 2 hours, they were aboard a fast medical transport ship heading toward the mining station. During the journey, Amy reviewed the initial casualty reports. The explosion had occurred near a massive crystal formation that the miners had been trying to extract. The crystals had unusual properties that affected different species in different ways. Some workers were suffering from energy poisoning. Others had been affected by temporal distortions, similar to what Thexmol had experienced. A few were exhibiting symptoms that had never been recorded in any medical database. "This is going to be unlike anything we've handled before," Amy told her team as they studied the reports. "We're not just dealing with standard injuries. We're dealing with unknown conditions affecting multiple species simultaneously." Jake, a steady man with graying hair and calm eyes, nodded grimly. "It's like a perfect storm of everything that can go wrong in alien medicine." Lisa, younger but experienced with complex pediatric cases, added, "The station's medical AI is giving error messages for most of the patients. They don't know how to prioritize treatment when every case seems impossible." When they arrived at the mining station, Amy was shocked by what she saw. The medical bay was in chaos. Injured workers were lying on beds, on the floor, and in the corridors. The station's medical staff, led by Dr. Quintal, a mantis-like being, with compound eyes, were moving frantically between patients but seemed paralyzed by indecision. "We cannot determine treatment priorities," Dr. Quintal explained to Amy. "Our triage protocols are designed for standard injuries, but most of these cases do not fit any known categories. The medical AI keeps telling us that treatment is impossible for 60% of the patients." Amy quickly assessed the situation. The alien medical staff were excellent at treating injuries they understood, but they were struggling with the unprecedented nature of this disaster. They needed someone to help them see patterns and connections that their systematic approach was missing. "Jake, take the left section," Amy ordered. "Lisa, you handle the workers with energy-based symptoms. I'll coordinate triage and work with the most complex cases." Amy began moving through the medical bay, not trying to diagnose or treat patients immediately, but simply observing and listening. She noticed things that the medical scanners were missing. Several of the crystal-based workers were humming in harmony, and their symptoms seemed to be synchronized. A group of energy beings were clustering together, sharing their life force to keep the weakest members stable. "Dr. Quintal," Amy called out, "some of these patients are helping each other in ways your scanners can't detect. We need to group them by species and let them use their natural healing methods while we handle the medical treatment." Meanwhile, Jake had discovered something important. Many of the workers who seemed to have different conditions were actually suffering from the same problem: exposure to unstable temporal energy from the crystals. But the energy was affecting each species differently based on their biology and psychology. "Amy," Jake reported, "I think we're looking at this wrong. It's not dozens of different conditions. It's one condition with dozens of different symptoms." Lisa made a similar discovery with the energy-poisoned workers. "The poisoning is real," she told Amy, "but it's being made worse by panic and fear. The workers are scared because they don't understand what's happening to them. If we can calm them down and explain what's going on, their bodies will be better able to process the excess energy." Amy realized that they needed to completely reorganize their approach. Instead of treating each patient as an individual case, they needed to address the disaster as a connected event affecting the entire community of workers. She gathered the human medical team and the station's medical staff together. "We're going to try something that might seem strange," she announced. "Instead of isolating patients by their symptoms, we're going to group them by species and by the type of crystal exposure they experienced. Then we're going to treat this as a community trauma event, not just a collection of individual injuries." Dr. Quintal's compound eyes showed confusion. "That does not follow standard triage procedures." "Standard procedures aren't working," Amy replied gently. "We need to try a different approach." Amy organized the medical bay into sections based on her team's observations. Crystal-based workers were grouped together so they could harmonize their healing vibrations. Energy beings were allowed to share life force while receiving medical treatment. Workers who had experienced temporal distortions were treated in quiet areas where they could process their disorientation without additional stimulation. But Amy's most important innovation was creating a central area where workers from all species could gather to talk about what they had experienced. She realized that many of the medical symptoms were being made worse by the psychological trauma of the explosion and the fear of unknown injuries. "People heal better when they understand what's happening to them and when they don't feel alone," Amy explained to Dr. Quintal. "Fear and confusion make physical symptoms worse." The human medical team moved through the groups, not just providing medical care, but also offering emotional support and clear explanations of what was happening. They helped workers understand that their strange symptoms were temporary effects of crystal exposure, not permanent damage. Jake worked with a group of miners who were experiencing memory displacement, helping them understand that they were not losing their minds, but simply processing temporal energy that would fade over time. Lisa organized activities for the energy beings that helped them stabilize their life force while sharing strength with each other. Amy coordinated the overall effort, making quick decisions about treatment priorities based on intuition and observation rather than computer algorithms. She moved constantly between groups, adjusting treatments based on how patients responded and looking for new patterns that might help other cases. The transformation was remarkable. Within hours, the chaos in the medical bay had become organized. Activity. Patients who had been writhing in confusion were now calm and cooperative. Workers who had seemed near death were stabilizing and beginning to recover. Dr. Quintal watched in amazement as the human approach succeeded where all the advanced technology had failed. "I do not understand how this works," he admitted to Amy. "You have not used any treatments that are not in our medical database. Yet the results are far better than anything we achieved with our standard protocols." Amy smiled tiredly. "It's not about using different treatments," she explained. "It's about understanding that healing is not just a physical process. When people are scared and confused, their bodies cannot heal properly. When they feel supported and understand what's happening to them, their natural healing abilities work much better." By the end of the day, over 80% of the injured workers had recovered enough to return to light duty. The cases that had seemed impossible were now manageable. The station's medical AI, which had been giving error messages all day, suddenly began providing useful treatment recommendations as the patient's condition stabilized and became recognizable. As Amy and her team prepared to leave the mining station, Dr. Quintal approached her with a request. "Would you be willing to return to train our medical staff in these methods? I think we have much to learn from human medicine." Administrator Velthar sat in his office at the Galactic Medical Council headquarters, staring at a stack of reports that seemed to grow taller every day. Each report told the same strange story. Human medical personnel were solving cases that the most advanced alien doctors could not handle. Cases that should have been impossible to cure were being resolved with methods that made no scientific sense. Velthar was a practical being. His people, the Andromedans, had built their civilization on logic and careful planning. They did not believe in luck or magic. Every problem had a scientific solution if you had enough knowledge and the right technology. But these reports about humans were challenging everything he thought he knew about medicine. He called for Dr. Kethvar to come to his office. The Zephyrian doctor arrived within an hour, his crystalline skin showing the blue tint that meant he was nervous. "Tell me about this human nurse," Velthar said, pointing to Amy's file on his desk. "How did she cure a patient that your entire medical team could not help?" Dr. Kethvar shifted uncomfortably. "Administrator, I am not sure I can explain it in terms that will satisfy you. She did not use any advanced technology. She did not follow any established medical protocols. She simply talked to the patient and made him comfortable. That is not medicine," Velthar said firmly. "That is emotional support. Emotional support does not cure physical symptoms." "That is what I thought too," Dr. Kethvar admitted, but the patient recovered completely. His condition was reversed in a matter of hours, something our best equipment could not accomplish in days of treatment. Velthar reviewed the other reports. The case of the Hiveka, who lost their mental connection. The energy being who was dying of loneliness. A crystal-based life form who stopped growing because of depression. A shapeshifter who got stuck in one form due to anxiety. All of these, Cases had been solved by human medical personnel using methods that seemed more like counseling than medicine. Yet the results were undeniable. Patients who had been given up for dead were now healthy and functioning normally. I want to meet this Amy Collins, Velthar decided, and I want to understand how she does what she does. Amy arrived at the Galactic Medical Council headquarters a week later. She was not intimidated by the massive building or the important officials who greeted her. She seemed as comfortable there as she had been in the medical bays where she worked. Velthar interviewed her in his office, recording everything for later study. Nurse Collins, can you explain your methods? How do you diagnose conditions that our most advanced scanners cannot detect? Amy thought for a moment before answering. I don't really diagnose conditions the way you mean, she said. I try to understand the whole patient, not just their symptoms. On Earth, we learned a long time ago that sometimes what looks like a medical problem is really an emotional or spiritual problem that shows up in the body. But that is not scientific, Velthar objected. How can you be sure your approach will work? I can't be sure, Amy admitted. Every patient is different. Every situation is unique. That's why I don't follow a set protocol. I have to look at each case and figure out what that specific patient needs. This answer troubled Velthar. Medicine was supposed to be predictable. Doctors were supposed to follow established procedures that produced reliable results. But Amy was describing an approach based on intuition and improvisation. What if you are wrong? He asked. What if your guess about what a patient needs is incorrect? Amy smiled. Then I try something else. The important thing is not to give up. Sometimes the answer is not in any medical textbook or computer database. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and be willing to try new approaches. Velthar decided to test Amy's abilities directly. He arranged for her to examine several patients who had been brought to the Council's research hospital. These were cases that had stumped the best doctors in the galaxy. The first patient was a silicon-based life form whose crystal structure was slowly cracking apart. Every attempt to repair the cracks had failed, and the doctors expected the patient to die within days. Amy spent an hour with the patient, asking questions about his life and experiences. She learned that he had been forced to leave his home planet due to war and had been living as a refugee for several years. The stress and grief of losing his home had caused his body to become brittle and fragile. Instead of trying to fix the cracks directly, Amy worked with the hospital staff to create a support group for refugee patients. She helped the silicon being connect with others who had similar experiences of loss and displacement. As his emotional healing progressed, his crystal structure began to stabilize and repair itself. The second patient was a gas-based life form who was having trouble maintaining his shape. He kept dispersing into the air and had to be constantly contained in a special chamber. The doctors thought it was a physical problem with his molecular bonds. Amy discovered that the patient was struggling with an identity crisis. He was a young being who was trying to decide what he wanted to become as an adult, and his uncertainty was literally causing him to lose his sense of self. Amy worked with him to explore his interests and goals, helping him develop confidence in his choices. As his sense of identity became stronger, his ability to maintain his physical form returned. Each case Amy handled showed the same pattern. The medical symptoms were real and serious, but they were caused by emotional, social, or spiritual problems rather than purely physical ones. Once those underlying issues were addressed, the physical symptoms often resolved themselves. Velthar was forced to admit that Amy's success rate was impressive. but he still did not understand how her methods worked or how they could be taught to other medical personnel. "Administrator," Amy said during one of their meetings, "I think the problem is that you are trying to turn what I do into a set of rules or procedures. But that is not how it works. Every patient is unique, so every solution has to be unique too." "Then how can we train other medical personnel to do what you do?" Velthar asked. "You don't train them to do what I do," Amy explained. "You train them to think the way I think. You teach them to look at patients as whole beings with feelings and fears and hopes, not just as collections of symptoms. You teach them to trust their instincts and to be willing to try approaches that might seem unusual." Velthar realized that Amy was describing something much more complex than he had originally thought. She was not just using different medical techniques. She was using a completely different way of understanding what it meant to be sick and what it meant to be healed. The administrator made a decision that would change galactic medicine forever. He authorized the creation of the Human Medical Integration Program. This program would bring human medical personnel to hospitals across the galaxy and train them to work alongside alien doctors. Amy was asked to lead the training program. She would teach other humans how to approach impossible medical cases using intuition, empathy, and creative problem-solving. The program would also educate alien medical staff about human methods and how to integrate them with advanced technology and established protocols. The first class of human medical trainees included Jake Martinez, a former emergency medical technician from Texas, and Lisa Thompson, a pediatric nurse from Oregon. Amy taught them that their job was not to replace alien medicine, but to complement it by bringing a different perspective to patient care. "Remember," Amy told her students, "every patient has a story. Your job is to listen to that story and figure out what they really need to heal. Sometimes it will be medicine or surgery, but sometimes it will be understanding, comfort, or help solving a problem that has nothing to do with their body." Word about Amy's success with Thexmol spread through the Galactic Medical Network faster than a ship at warp speed. Within 2 weeks, Amy received her first official request from another hospital. Centauri General needed help with a case that had their best doctors completely confused. Amy arrived at Centauri General to find a very different kind of problem. The patient was not one being, but 50 small insect-like creatures called the HFY. They lived as a group mind, sharing thoughts and feelings with each other. But something had gone wrong with their connection. Dr. Wen Tal, the head doctor at Centauri General, was a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes. He explained the situation as he led Amy to the treatment room. The HFY work crew was repairing a communication tower when there was an energy surge, Dr. Wental said. The blast disrupted their mental connection to each other. Now they cannot think as one mind anymore. They are trapped in individual consciousness, and it is driving them insane. Amy looked through the window into the treatment room. The 50 HFY were scattered around the room, each one moving in random patterns. Some were hitting their heads against the walls. Others were curled up in corners, making small crying sounds. A few were trying to communicate with the others, but without their shared mind connection, they could not understand each other. "What have you tried so far?" Amy asked. "We have used neural stimulators to try to re-establish their mental link," Dr. Wental explained. "We have given them medicine to calm their brains. We have even tried putting them in isolation tanks to reduce outside interference. Nothing works." Amy watched the HFY for several minutes. She noticed that even though they were acting confused and scared, they kept trying to get closer to each other. They would move toward one member of their group, touch them gently, and then move away in frustration when they could not share thoughts. "They miss each other," Amy said quietly. "Of course. They miss their mental connection," Dr. Wentall replied. "That is the problem we are trying to fix." "No," Amy said. "I mean they miss each other emotionally. Look at how they try to touch and comfort each other. They are not just missing their shared thoughts. They are lonely and scared because they cannot feel their family anymore." Amy asked Dr. Wentall to bring all the HFY into one room together. The doctor was worried this would make them more agitated, but Amy explained her idea. "Instead of trying to fix their mental connection with technology, let's help them reconnect emotionally first," she said. "On Earth, when people lose the ability to communicate normally, we sometimes use group therapy to help them find new ways to connect." Amy entered the room slowly and sat down on the floor in the center. The HFY stopped their frantic movements and stared at her. She began to speak in a gentle voice, the same way she had spoken to Thexmol. "I know you are scared," she said. "I know you feel alone for the first time in your lives. But you are not really alone. Your family is right here with you." She gestured to all the HFY around the room. "You may not be able to share thoughts anymore, but you can still share feelings. You can still care for each other." Amy started by helping them remember how to touch each other without expecting a mental connection. She showed them how to sit close together, how to hold hands or touch antennae gently, just for the comfort of physical contact. At first, the HFY were frustrated. They would touch each other and then pull away when no thoughts came through the contact. But Amy encouraged them to try again, this time focusing on the feeling of being close to someone they loved, rather than trying to share minds. Slowly, the HFY began to calm down. They started sitting in small groups, holding each other, and making soft humming sounds. Amy realized that the humming was their way of sharing emotions when they could not share thoughts. "Can you all hum together?" Amy asked. "Make the same sound so you can feel like you are doing something as one group again." The HFY tried it. At first, their humming was chaotic and out of tune. But as they listened to each other and tried to match the sounds, something wonderful happened. Their humming became harmonious, and as it did, their individual distress began to fade. Amy spent hours with them, teaching them simple ways to communicate and share feelings without their mental link. She showed them how to use gestures, how to make different sounds for different emotions, and how to work together on simple tasks. By the end of the day, something amazing had happened. The HFY had not gotten their mental connection back, but they had learned to function as a group in a new way. They were no longer scared and confused. Instead, they were curious about their new form of consciousness. "We are still we," one of the HFY said to Amy in broken standard language. "Different we, but still we." Dr. Wentall was shocked. "But we did not fix their neural connection. How is this a cure?" Amy smiled. "Sometimes healing is not about going back to the way things were. Sometimes it is about learning to live with change in a healthy way." 3 weeks later, Amy was called to Rigel Prime to help with another impossible case. This time, the patient was an energy being called Luxara, who was slowly fading away despite all attempts to stabilize her energy matrix. Luxara existed as pure light and electrical energy, floating in a special containment field. She had been found drifting in space, barely alive, and brought to the hospital for treatment. But no matter what the doctors did, she continued to grow dimmer and weaker. Dr. Zorith, the energy specialist at Rigel Prime, showed Amy all the test results. We have fed her every type of energy we can think of. Solar energy, thermal energy, quantum energy, even dark matter energy. Nothing helps. She just keeps fading. Amy studied Luxara through the containment field. The energy being pulsed slowly like a heartbeat made of light. Her glow was very dim, and sometimes she flickered as if she might disappear entirely. "How long has she been here?" Amy asked. 6 months, Dr. Zorith replied. She was found alone, in the void between star systems. We do not know where she came from or what happened to her. Amy had an idea. Has anyone tried to communicate with her? To find out what she wants or needs? She is an energy being, Dr. Zorith said. We do not have a way to translate energy patterns into language. But Amy remembered something from her training on Earth. Sometimes patients could not tell you what was wrong in words, but their behavior could give you clues. She watched Luxara carefully and noticed that her light pulsed faster whenever the medical staff left the room, and slower when they returned. "I think she is lonely," Amy said. "She has been alone in space for who knows how long. And now she is alone in this containment field. Maybe what she needs is not more energy, but companionship." Amy asked Dr. Zorith to search for other energy beings in the nearby systems. Within a few days, they located a small community of Luxara's species living around a distant star. Amy suggested they invite some of them to visit the hospital. When the other energy beings arrived, the change in Luxara was immediate. Her light became brighter and more vibrant. She began moving around her containment field with energy she had not shown in months. Through energy pattern communication with her own kind, they learned that she had been separated from her family during a solar storm and had been searching for them ever since. The loneliness and despair had been draining her life force more than any physical injury could have. With her family nearby and regular visits from her own people, Luxara recovered completely within weeks. Amy Collins walked into the medical bay carrying a small bag and wearing a simple blue uniform. She was not tall, and she did not look like someone who could solve impossible medical cases. Her brown hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she had kind eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Dr. Kethvar watched as she approached Thexmol's bed. He expected her to ask for the test results or to look at the computer screens first. That was what any proper doctor would do. Instead, Amy did something that surprised him. She stopped and took a deep breath through her nose. "Ozone," she said quietly. "He smells like ozone, the way the air smells after lightning strikes." Dr. Kethvar had not noticed any smell. His people could detect many different scents, but he had been so focused on the medical data that he had not paid attention to such simple things. Amy moved closer to Thexmol and looked into his eyes. The Volcani trader was still glowing softly, and his clear skin showed the strange lights moving underneath. But Amy was not looking at those obvious symptoms. She was looking at his eyes. "His pupils are very large," she said. "Like someone who has been in a dark place for a long time and then suddenly came into bright light." She pulled a chair next to the bed and sat down. This shocked Dr. Kethvar even more. Medical personnel were supposed to stand while examining patients. Sitting suggested a casual approach that seemed unprofessional. "Hello, Thexamol," Amy said in a gentle voice. "My name is Amy. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me how you're feeling right now?" Thexmol's eyes focused on her with difficulty. "I feel lost," he said, "like I am floating in space between the stars. I can see so many things, but I cannot understand why." That must be very frightening, Amy said. When did this start? Can you remember what you were doing before you began to feel this way? Dr. Kethvar wanted to interrupt. They had already asked these questions. The patient's recent activities were in his file, but Amy held up her hand slightly, asking him to wait. Thexmol thought for a moment. I was on Kepler 7. There is an old sacred place there where my people have gone for thousands of years. Crystal formations that reach up to the sky like fingers. I went there to meditate and find peace after losing my business partner. You were grieving, Amy said. It was not a question. Yes. Vortax died in a transport accident. We had worked together for 30 years. I felt empty inside. The elders said the crystal caves would help me find balance. Amy nodded. What happened in the caves? Thexmol's glow became brighter as he remembered. I sat in the center of the largest crystal formation. The crystals began to sing, a low humming sound that went deep into my bones. I felt connected to something vast and ancient. But then, something went wrong. Wrong how? The crystals started singing too loud. The sound filled my head until I could not think. I saw flashes of light. And suddenly I was not just myself anymore. I was connected to every Vulcani who had ever meditated in that place. I could feel their memories, their emotions, their experiences of loss and healing. Dr. Kethvar frowned. This sounded like a spiritual experience, not a medical condition. But Amy was listening carefully, as if every word was important. How long were you in the caves? Amy asked. I thought it was only a few hours. But when I came out, my computer said I had been missing for 3 days. Amy was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she asked, Thexmol, do you believe that what happened to you in the caves was just in your mind? Or do you think something real happened to your body and spirit? The question surprised Dr. Kethvar. Medical science dealt with facts and data, not beliefs and spirits. But Thexmol answered immediately. It was real. The crystals changed me. They opened doorways in my mind that were never supposed to be opened. Now I cannot close them. Amy stood up and looked at Dr. Kethvar. I think I understand what's happening, she said, but I need to try something that might seem strange to you. What do you propose? Dr. Kethvar asked. First, we need to dim the lights in here. The bright medical lights are making his symptoms worse. Second, we need to reduce the noise from all these machines. And third, I want to play some music. Dr. Kethvar's skin changed color, showing his confusion. How will that help? This is a medical emergency, not a relaxation session. Amy smiled patiently. Doctor, your tests show that Thexmol's body is stable. His hearts are beating strangely, but they are working. His brain is very active, but it is not damaged. What I think is happening is that his spirit or his mind is stuck between different states of consciousness. That is not a medical condition, Dr. Yexil said. Isn't it? Amy asked. On Earth, we have learned that the mind and body are connected in ways that medical equipment cannot always measure. Sometimes what looks like a physical problem is really an emotional or spiritual problem, and sometimes you cannot heal the body until you heal the spirit. She opened her small bag and took out a device that could play music. In human medicine, we have found that certain sounds and environments can help people who are lost in their own minds find their way back. Dr. Kethvar did not like this approach. It was not scientific. It was not based on proven medical procedures, but nothing else had worked and Thexmol was not getting better. Very well, he said. Try your human methods. Amy dimmed the lights. until the room was soft and comfortable. She turned off the beeping monitors and loud scanning machines, leaving only the quiet ones that would alert them if Thexmol was in real danger. Then she played music, gentle sounds that seemed to flow like water. The change in Thexmol was immediate. His glow became softer and less frantic. His breathing slowed down, and the wild look in his eyes became calmer. "Better?" Amy asked, sitting back down beside him. "Yes," Thexmol whispered. "The noise in my head is quieter now." Amy spent the next hour talking with Thexmol about his grief, his fear, and his experience in the crystal caves. She helped him understand that what happened to him was not a curse or a disease, but a spiritual crisis brought on by trying to heal from loss, while his mind was opened by powerful crystal energies. Slowly, Thexmol's skin began to return to its normal gray color. His 3 hearts started beating in rhythm with each other. The lights under his skin faded until they were gone. Dr. Kethvar watched in amazement as the patient who had been beyond their help became normal again. Simply, through gentle conversation and a comfortable environment, Dr. Kethvar stood in the middle of the medical bay, staring at the screens that covered the walls. His 4 hands moved quickly over the control panels, but each test came back with the same result. Error. Unknown. Cannot process. The patient on the medical table was not like anything he had seen before. Thexmol was a Volcani trader, which meant his skin should have been hard, like rock and gray in color. But now his skin was becoming clear like glass. Dr. Kethvar could see through it to the bones and organs underneath. "Run the scan again," Dr. Kethvar told his assistant, Dr. Yexil. The young Zephyrian doctor moved to the control panel and started the body scanner for the 5th time that day. Thexmol groaned on the table. His 3 hearts were beating in, a strange pattern that made no sense. The monitors showed that his hearts were beating at 3 different speeds, something that should have killed him hours ago. But he was still alive and talking. "Doctor," Thexmol said in a weak voice, "I can see my childhood. I can see my mother making stone soup in our cave home. But that was 50 years ago. Why am I seeing this now?" Dr. Kethvar did not know what to say. In all his years of medicine, he had never heard of a patient seeing their past while awake. The medical database had no record of such symptoms. The quantum scanners showed energy moving through Thexmol's body in ways that defied all known science. "The scan is complete," Dr. Yexil reported. "The results are the same. The computer cannot identify the condition. It suggests we contact the central medical database on the home world." Dr. Kethvar's crystalline skin changed color slightly, showing his stress. The central medical database contained the medical knowledge of 12 different alien species. If it could not help them, then this case was truly impossible. 3 hours passed. The central medical database sent back the same answer. Unknown condition. No treatment recommended. The experts on the home world were just as confused as Dr. Kethvar. Thexmol's condition was getting worse. His skin was now completely clear, and strange lights were moving under it like tiny stars. He kept talking about seeing things from his past, but now he was also seeing things that had not happened yet. "I can see myself next week," Thexmol whispered. "I am in my ship, flying to the crystal markets on Vega Prime, but I am also here on this table. How can I be in 2 places?" Dr. Yexil checked the monitors again. "His brain activity is off the charts. The readings don't make sense. It's like his mind is experiencing multiple time periods at once." Dr. Kethvar felt helpless. He had studied medicine for 20 years. He had treated thousands of patients from dozens of different species. He had access to the most advanced medical technology in the galaxy, but none of it was helping Thexmol. The other doctors in the medical bay gathered around to look at the strange case. Dr. Zenith, the head surgeon, examined the scans with her large compound eyes. Dr. Mortux, the expert in alien biology, ran, his tentacles over his data pad as he read the test results. "I have never seen anything like this," Dr. Zenith said. "The patient should be dead, but all his vital signs are stable except for these strange energy patterns." Dr. Mortux nodded, his large head. "The quantum scanners detect massive amounts of temporal energy in his system. But where did it come from? And why is it affecting him this way?" They tried every treatment they could think of. They gave Thexmol medicines to stabilize his hearts. They used energy dampeners to try to stop the strange lights under his skin. They put him in a stasis field to slow down his biological processes. Nothing worked. In fact, some of the treatments seemed to make him worse. After they tried the stasis field, Thexmol started seeing not just his own past and future, but the past and future of other people as well. "I can see the doctor's childhood," Thexmol said, pointing at Dr. Kethvar. "You had a pet crystal spider when you were young. It was blue, and it liked to sit on your shoulder." Dr. Kethvar stepped back in shock. He had never told anyone about his pet crystal spider. It had died when he was only 8 years old, over 40 years ago. The medical team was running out of options. They had tried every standard treatment. They had consulted with experts across the galaxy. They had used the most advanced technology available to them. Dr. Yexil looked at Dr. Kethvar with worry in her silver eyes. "Doctor, should we contact the human nurse?" Dr. Kethvar's skin changed color again. He did not like admitting that. His advanced medical knowledge had failed. The humans were a young species, barely into space travel for a few hundred years. Their medical technology was primitive compared to what the Zephyrians had developed over thousands of years. But there had been stories. Strange stories about human medical personnel solving cases that stumped even the best alien doctors. Cases where all the technology and all the knowledge in the database could not help. But somehow the humans found a way. Dr. Kethvar looked at Thexmol, who was now glowing softly and mumbling about seeing the birth of stars. The Vulcani trader's condition was getting stranger by the hour, and nothing they tried was helping. "Yes," Dr. Kethvar said finally. "Call the human nurse. Amy Collins, I believe her name is. She is stationed in this sector. Dr. Yexil sent the emergency call." Within an hour, they received a reply. Amy Collins would arrive on the next transport ship. She would be there in 6 hours. Dr. Kethvar hoped she could help, because if she could not, he was afraid that Thexmol might be, lost forever in the strange place between time and space where his mind seemed to be traveling.